Hi, guys. Welcome to the Simple Doesn't Mean Easy podcast. We are here weekly working at simplifying things in our lives one day at a time, one simple step at a time. I'm your host, Michelle Visser, and today's guest is an author that I just found so encouraging. I mean, I seriously have some action steps I'm going to put into place later on today and throughout the week ahead after talking with Becky. And I learned some things that I found so fascinating. Becky is the author of Cultivating Deeper Connections, a new book that is out with Moody Publisher. Becky has a degree in biblical literature. She's the host of the Connected Mom podcast, and she has a passion to help women find hope and healing and freedom and genuine life transformation. And it's not rocket science, guys. It's simple ways that she helps women do those things. She's the author of numerous books, including, I found these two titles intriguing: How to Listen So People Will Talk and How to Listen So Your Kids Will Talk. And of course, the new Cultivating Deeper Connections, which is what we're talking about today. Be sure to check out the show notes to get that study guide that Becky explains about and mentions later on. And be sure to stick with us to the end because there's a couple of just really great things that Becky mentions that I don't want you to miss. I looked up listen to me, mirror neurons. That's hard to say, mirror neurons that she talks about. Don't miss that. It's so cool. And I looked it up. It is such a fascinating topic. I'm going to see if I can find an expert to come on and tell us more about it because really, really good stuff. And she also mentions not building a monument to our own pain. And she helps us break down what that entails. So listen to the end, check out the show notes, go to soulyrested.com/podcast to sign up to get those show notes in your inbox. And now let's bring on Becky. We have to pause this episode, though, because I need to ask you a question. Did you know there is a way to grow amazing fresh food with no worries of weeds, pests, or any concern about poor weather conditions? In fact, you can grow food year round, literally in your kitchen, no matter where you live. I'm talking about sprouts. They are nutrient dense food packed with vitamins and minerals, fiber, protein, and antioxidants. And I love that there are all different types of seeds you can sprout. So you get varying nutrient profiles with all the different seeds that you sprout. I've put together a really helpful resource for you. Go to soulyrested.com/sprout, SPROUT. And there I'm going to explain maximum benefits, give you lots of insights into how you can sprout well, give you tips and tricks to avoid any problems, tell you what sprouts to use and how to use them. All of it, soulyrested.com/sprout to get that resource. And there I will introduce you to True Leaf Market. I mean, I've been telling you about True Leaf Market for years and years because I love this company. They've offered you a really sweet discount available for a very limited time. Go check it all out at soulyrested.com/sprout. I am so excited that you are here to talk to us today, Becky, because your book was so encouraging. Cultivating Deeper Connections. Is it out? Is it available now?
Oh yeah. Oh
Oh,
yeah.
good.
It
Oh,
is.
good.
Yeah.
So people can find it anywhere they buy their books, I'm
Yep.
sure.
You can find it anywhere.
And it's just so encouraging. But I want to start with this fact that really blew me away because you point out that a few years ago, the US Surgeon General declared loneliness an epidemic. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I was fascinated by that as well, Michelle. Loneliness is really not feeling connected to people. And so the Surgeon General came out with this health report because when we feel lonely and isolated, it impacts our health. And in that report, I think it's like 1 out of 2 Americans feel significantly lonely every week. I mean,
Mm,
the statistics are
mm,
ridiculous, and it's this feeling that you don't have anybody that you're deeply connected to. And
Hmm.
it's as bad for our health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It
Wow.
leads to heart disease. It has been linked to type 2 diabetes. I mean, it's been linked to memory issues in the
Wow.
older population. I mean, it's really seriously impacting our health and our mental health,
Yeah,
depression
for
and
sure.
anxiety.
For
Yeah.
sure. I mean, here on the show, we're usually focusing on food and our diet and nutrition and sometimes exercise, but we don't think about how something that's actually, in a lot of ways, easier than worrying about every calorie and what it entails and if it's good calories or bad. It's actually easier to work at a friendship in some ways. It's definitely more rewarding, I think, than
Yeah. And
focusing.
for
And
you and I, that does seem a lot easier. I mean, I'm
right.
in this season where I'm trying to go to the gym every day, and it's like, oh,
Oh,
I really
bless
feel
you,
like
because I'm
going.
really happy, Becky, if I get there 3 times a week.
Yes, well,
So good
that's the
for
way it's
you.
working out for me today, this week. But
Yeah.
so making friends is a lot easier. But for some people, they've adopted a narrative that maybe, I have trouble making friends. I don't know how to
Mhm.
make conversation. I don't know how to engage with people. And so rather than trying, they give up,
Mhm.
and they back
Yeah.
up and then they end up isolated.
Yeah, for sure. And I didn't mean to act like it's easy for me either. Um, it just it seems like in the end it's more rewarding. There's definitely
Yeah.
an effort. You have to make an effort to be a decent friend of any sort. And so I don't want to say that it's easy, but just at the end, sometimes I don't know if you're like me, it's like, oh, I got to get to that Bible study, or oh, I'm running late to see that friend and I can't cancel. I've got to get there. And it's just a struggle, right? But
Yes.
afterwards, I don't know if there's ever been a time ever when I've said, "Oh, darn it, I wish I hadn't gone and met that friend," or "Man, I really wish I hadn't have got
Yes.
to." It's never like that. I'm always glad. It always encourages me. I'm always thankful that I did it. So, it's not always easy, but what I meant was it's always rewarding. So why aren't we making
To
the effort
lose it.
more? But when we think
Well,
about impacting our health like that, that's really got to be a motivation for us, I feel like.
yeah, it's got to be a wake up call,
Yeah.
because loneliness is not working for us. And,
Yeah.
we're not designed that way. We're designed to need people. And I think, what we've done, particularly here in the West,
Mm.
the Western part of the world, is we have valued success and busyness and striving and,
Yes.
the good old American dream, and we have put the priority there rather than the deep friendships. But if you
For
weigh
sure.
the two out, the deep friendships actually are a lot more rewarding and fulfilling than how
Yes.
successful you are.
Absolutely. And they're going to last you for a lifetime if you cultivate the friendships. The jobs come and go.
Yeah, for
Now,
sure.
I thought it was interesting too that when the Surgeon General came out with this, that it was pretty obvious that it's not just because of 2020. This is
Yeah.
something that we had been struggling with before that, right?
Right. I mean, 2020 and the whole pandemic did not help us any
Right.
because people were isolated. But I think I like to think of it as the great revealer. Like,
Mm,
oh, we really have a problem.
yeah,
People are lonely. But you know what? They've been lonely for the last 25 years. And I think as our society has changed, as our culture has changed, as we've become, I mean, I like to describe us as the hurried culture.
so
We're
true. So
always
true.
in a rush to get someplace and to
Yep.
get going and to accomplish. And that is not helping our relationships, because the bottom line is you can't do relationships in a rush. It just doesn't work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what about social media? We definitely need to talk about that and how it impacts it all. Um,
Yeah.
We actually, here on the show a while ago, we had Chris Martin on. It was back for those of you who want to catch it, season 5, episode 11. And we talked all about social media's impact on our health. So that alone
Yes.
is a whole nother way that we're impacting our health poorly. But to think how it's connected to making us lonely, which is also impacting our health, it's just this huge avalanche that's happening. So talk to me about that. What do we need to be
It
doing?
is. Social media really has become an addiction. And
Absolutely.
so, it pulls us in because it promises a connection, right? So the felt need is connection. So you start maybe scrolling your Instagram account or your Facebook account, and it might even start with great motivation. You want to connect with old friends or whatever, so
Mm,
you start
true.
scrolling. But then every time you get a like on your Instagram post or your Facebook post or your TikTok video, it's like a little dopamine hit to your brain, and it
Mm-hmm.
becomes addictive to you because you need more and more and
Mm,
more. But in the end, what researchers are telling us is the longer you spend on social media, the more lonely you're going to feel. And I
mm-hmm.
think that's for several reasons. First of all, it's not a face to face connection. Second of all, a lot of times what's happening on social media is a projected perspective on somebody's life. It's got filters, it's presenting the best. So
Yeah.
you look at that and you think, well, why don't I look like her? Or why doesn't my husband bring me flowers like hers? Or why doesn't my kid behave like that? My kid, I can't even get them to sit still for a picture, you know?
You're right.
And so it increases this feeling like I'm all alone. I don't have anybody to
Mm,
really connect with. And it's
mm,
really damaging to our health.
mm. That's such a good point that it really does. I don't know if I've thought about it that way before. The whole idea of the filtered experience that we're seeing on social media, that it literally makes us more alone because it makes us feel that much more detached from others. Nobody else is like us. Nobody else has all these problems we have. It's beautiful on their end, right? Huh.
Right. I mean, one of the worst social media posts I ever saw, this was years ago. This
Hmm.
woman posted, it's 6 weeks after my baby, and after giving birth, and I'm back in my size 2 jeans. And I'm
Oh.
sitting there looking at this and I'm thinking, why on earth would you post that? Because every other mama out there who's
Mm-hmm.
given birth 6 weeks ago is struggling. Maybe her hormones are out of whack. She's trying to get her body back. It's like, okay, that's not helpful to anybody.
Absolutely. And it was just to boost her own self-esteem. I mean, what would be there be no other point to it?
Right.
uh, and I also liked what you said about it makes I think it's a shame that a lot of times we feel like we've connected with somebody when all we've done is sent them a message on social media. And we are forgetting that we missed out on a lot when it comes to that connection. We missed out on the interaction, the eye contact, the expression we were
Yes.
sharing. And we forget that these days because, we say, oh, I talked to so and so, but no, did you actually talk or was it just a text?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
a lot of time, conversation, I love the word conversation, right? So,
Mm,
and I love a rich conversation with a friend, but it involves listening, it involves leaning in, it
mhm.
involves empathy. It doesn't involve me just blurting out a bunch of stuff to my friend. That's not a
Yeah.
conversation. That's you flirting, for lack of a
Yes.
better term,
Yeah.
but so rarely is there a really in-depth conversation on social media where you really are offering empathy, you're leaning
Absolutely.
into the person, you're understanding what they're saying, and we need that to feel connected.
For sure. You had an example in your book. Was her name Linda? Am I remembering that right?
I had several. So which
Okay.
example
Well,
are
she
you
was
talking about?
Linda was one who was a very spacey friend typically,
Oh
who
yeah.
would forget things but
We're
when it
still
was
good friends.
So tell me about Linda because I thought that was a
Yeah.
great example of what you're talking about right now.
Yes, she is a little bit spacey. I'm a coffee lover, and I remember she took me to. I said, we were out in the car, and I'm like, I really want a Starbucks. She's like, okay, I've got it. So she drove in. Well, the Starbucks is behind the bank, and the bank window pulled down. And she said, I would like wait, what do you want? A grande dark roast coffee. And they're like, ma'am, this isn't Starbucks. This is the bank. I still laugh with her about that.
Oh, that's funny.
Only a non-coffee drinker would pull that off.
Yep.
But anyway,
Yep. Yep.
but when I'm with Linda and we're together, she leans in, she listens, she has great eye contact, she offers
Mhm.
empathy, she
Mhm.
feels with me, she offers wise counsel sometimes. She's a bit older than me. So I viewed her through the years as a bit of a mentor, and she has listened to my heart in
Mm.
our relationship. And so, when it comes to not being distracted, she's all there in a conversation. She's not on
Mhm.
her phone texting under the table.
Yeah.
She's not thinking about dinner tomorrow night. She's not mentally going through her grocery shopping list. She's all there for me. And that's the kind of friend I want to be for others.
Absolutely. And I'm sure it's good for Linda too. It helps both
Yeah.
of you when you're having a conversation like that because we crave that. We need that connection.
We
Um,
do. And science has proved that. We have these mirror neurons in our brains. And
mm,
so when you're out with a friend and you're leaning in and you're offering empathy as best you can and you're seeking to understand, there's this dynamic reaction between your neurons and the other person's neurons. And it's a beautiful
mm.
experience. And then you feel the connection.
That's really cool, Becky. I actually is
I
that in the book?
know.
Because I missed that. Is that in the book? I
It's actually in another book I wrote on how
okay.
to listen so people will talk. But I love
Yes,
that.
it's so cool. So literally science has found that the neurons in both of our brains are
To
reacting the
each
same
other.
way.
Yeah.
No.
Isn't that cool?
Wow. That's really neat. Okay, I'm just stopping and thinking about that. How cool is that?
I know.
Oh, so I mean, imagine if like we were doing a puzzle with a friend and talking, because then we are building neurons as we are doing the puzzle and we're talking, I don't know,
Yes.
maybe I need to try that one. Uh, okay, so you mentioned a couple things that she did or that she does
Yes.
that helps her stay connected. The phone
Right.
is not involved in your conversation, right? The phone needs
No,
to
I
go to
mean
the
we
side.
do we do pick up the phone and call each other.
Oh,
It's
right. I'm
not
sorry.
just texting.
I mean, when
Yes.
what I'm
Yes.
trying to figure out is I want you to give us some tips of how when we're with a friend and we
Yes.
know they're
Yes.
struggling, we know they need to talk,
Yes.
how do we really connect with them and give them that space to talk to us? So one thing that you mentioned is Linda is not texting under the table, right?
Right,
Like,
right. She's leaning in. And leaning
yes.
in is a body posture that sends the other person this message, you're important to me. I
Mm,
want to hear you.
yeah.
She looks you in the eye, and
Yeah.
we need to look each other in the eye and say,
Yeah.
wow, tell me more about that, Michelle. She asks great
Mm,
questions when she's
mhm.
with me, tell me
Mhm.
more. How did
Yeah.
that feel? She knows how to offer empathy. I think as friends, sometimes we fall into the trap of trying to fix another person's problem. And that's, I
Mhm.
suppose, another whole conversation for another whole day. But that doesn't
Mhm.
serve us well because really
Mhm.
nobody wants their problem fixed. They want to
Yeah.
feel heard and
Yeah.
valued.
Yeah. That's a good point. And I mean, sometimes I do appreciate a little fix that a friend points out that I've never thought of, but other times it almost like ends the conversation and kind of just makes me not want to talk anymore. And that's a good point
Right.
you're bringing up because, oh, well, okay, I guess that's the end of it then if that's what you think I need to do, whereas there's more I want to
Yeah.
tell you.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Because
Yeah.
most of us are looking for a friend to process with.
Yes, I believe that's the
And
wording you used in your description of Linda, that she helped you process through things. I love
yes,
that.
yes, she
I
really
love that.
did.
Okay, so you also mentioned that we have other distractions. We're more distracted than ever as a nation, as a people. So, are there other things other than social media? What else is distracting us and how is it impacting us?
I mean, the news, right? I mean,
Mm,
years ago, you turned on the evening news, so you watched it once a day. Now, because of our cell phones, we're getting news reports all day long, vivid stories, and some of those stories are very negative. So
mm,
we have all this information coming at us round the clock. We
mhm,
have emails coming through our phones to us. There's never been another generation that has had to be 100% accessible 24 hours a day. We're not
Yes.
designed like that, you know?
Yes.
And, so like when I was raising my kids, it's hard to even imagine this now, but, we had a phone on the wall with an answering
Yeah.
machine.
Yep.
Now I'm accessible to anybody
Mm,
24/7, but that's
mm-hmm.
exhausting us and not really helping us stay connected, because what it does then is it distracts me from having lunch with a really good friend, from putting my phone away, from really just enjoying the wonder of my friend, the
Yeah.
wonderfulness of her.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So what's the solution to that?
Well, for starters, I recommend put your phone away at least a half an hour a day.
Mm,
Seconders, turn it off when you're with a friend out to
mm,
lunch. Turn it off.
yeah.
Turn it off at night so you can get a decent night's
Yeah.
sleep without notifications dinging all nights.
Yeah.
There's an app on everybody's phone that has a sleep schedule, and set it for more sleep than you need, because you need to be able to wind down at night to get a good night's sleep. So,
Yeah. That's a good point.
make your phone so that nobody can reach you after 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah. Yeah. It is really tough. I know I also find that on the mornings that usually it's unintentional. I am not proud to say it's not usually an intentional thing, but I will sometimes go an hour or two without even knowing where my phone is in the morning. I wish I did it every day, but
Yeah.
on those mornings, it's like, whoa, I haven't held my phone in an hour and a half. It feels so good. Like, so
Yeah.
why do I not do that intentionally? I mean, I need to.
Well, we
Yeah.
all need to do that. But again, there's this addiction to our phones that I
Yeah,
don't think
really
anybody could have
is.
predicted.
I agree. I totally agree. And I also liked I don't know if should say liked, but I agree with what you said that we've become a society that everything has to be instant. And if somebody texts us, others expect a reply right away. I'm kind of shocked with some of my younger friends, like the actual 20 and 30-year-olds that
Yeah.
try and text with a lot and stay in contact with, that often they're so quick to get back to me. And if they take 2 hours, they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I was doing this." And I'm like, "Really? It's okay." You
I
know?
know, right.
It's
It's,
crazy though.
but it is true, and texting, I mean, it can be a good thing to stay connected that way, but it's, again, it can't take the place of those face to face conversations, the
Yeah.
deep places where you're really connecting with a friend.
Yeah. So, what I'm getting from what you're saying is we should be more intentional, like literally with a calendar or on your phone or a calendar, like a paper one, however you do it, and really set dates with friends and make sure we actually get together, because it's too easy, right? To think, oh, I
Right.
texted with so and so 3 times this week. I know what's going on in her life, but you haven't seen her, right?
Yeah, yeah, we need that face to face connection. One of the illustrations I use in the book, I have such fond memories of my grandmother. I would go to her house in
Mm,
Brooklyn, New York every summer for a week, and she would let me eat whatever I wanted to and all that kind of stuff,
yep.
But
Grandmoms are awesome.
yeah, they really are. And, she would every afternoon at 3 p.m. sharp, Aunt Isabel would come over. Now, to this day, I have no idea who Aunt Isabel is. We all called her that, but
I love it.
I don't think she was related to us. She was my grandmother's good friend, and we all
Yeah.
called her Aunt Isabel. But
Hmm.
every single day at 3 o'clock, she would come
Ah.
over. They would have coffee and coffee cake and talk and be together. And I'm like, I look back on that now and I think, who has time to get together with a friend every
Yeah,
single
every
afternoon?
day.
But that's how our society has changed, because I think we have to be intentional. And I do think that we need to start inviting people into our homes for coffee.
Mhm.
We're a society, we take people out to Starbucks. And
Yeah.
again, nothing wrong with Starbucks. I love them and I probably support them better than anybody. But there's nothing like having a friend in your home
Yeah,
for coffee or tea, and
for
it doesn't
sure.
have to be an elaborate meal. It could be having, somebody over for pizza, or it could be just for coffee and
Yeah.
just to connect that way. When you're in somebody's home, the connection goes deeper.
Yeah, I agree. And I also want to encourage myself as I'm saying this that a distraction I can think of when you said that kind of part of me just cringes a little in the fact that, well, that makes extra work that I have to pick up. The house is never nice and tidy and clean, but that's a distraction. And I think we
Yeah,
need to tell ourselves, no, if this is a true friendship, in
yeah,
some ways, it's better to just be real. If they come over and you're like, oh, I miss the dust bunnies in the corner, then she's not going to want to have you to her house next time, right? And
right,
she's going to feel
exactly.
overwhelmed. So let's just be real with each other. Invite our friends in, invite them into the real home and like it is, and
Yeah,
enjoy their,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And I think that brings up another thought that I have about forming these deeper connections is we have to be willing to be vulnerable.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't I don't want a friend who is so perfect, who never struggles, because then I feel terribly inadequate, right? And
Yes.
so I feel like in some ways we've put that expectation on ourselves, like I have to have my act all together, or I have to be the strong one all the time, and that doesn't really form a deep friendship. There
Yeah.
needs to be mutual vulnerability in a friendship where you come alongside each other and you support each other and comfort each other and walk together.
Yeah. And again, all of these things are the easier way to do it, right? I think in the long
Yeah,
run, it's easier to not worry about those barriers that you always put up to be strong, and it's easier to not
yeah,
worry about the barriers of your house being perfect. Make it
yeah,
make it just easier and connect with your friends. I love it. And a few other things that you mentioned that I want to make sure we covered that you mentioned in the book. Um, you talk about quietness, and I found that really intriguing. Actually mentioned that Florence Nightingale, I think you had a quote from her about how listening to quietness was actually healing, because I feel like noise is another distraction in our life that really
yes,
hurts us in a lot
yes.
of ways. So, can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, we live in such a noisy world. And I think we kind of like our phones, we've become addicted to noise, right? So we have the TV going, or we have, music going, or we have whatever going. But
Hmm.
quiet, I believe our brains need quiet to recalibrate, to really be able to think and daydream. And if you don't have time to think or daydream, and if you're always addicted to noise, when you are with a friend, you're not going to be able to just sit there quietly and listen to them. And so
Hmm.
we have to get back to putting some quiet spaces in our days. I have a fairly busy life, and I have learned to pause throughout my day. Now
Hmm.
I'm blessed because out my back window is Pikes Peak, which is gorgeous.
Hmm.
So every now, during the day, I'll just stop what I'm doing and go and pause for a minute and just take in the beauty of Pikes Peak, and it
Hmm.
creates gratitude in my heart, and I'm
Yeah,
able to say thank you to God for this beautiful creation,
absolutely.
and gratitude helps our friendships. And so bringing some quiet into your day is a really good idea, and maybe reflecting on why you feel lonely. I think that can be
Mm,
a really good exercise for us.
mm,
Have I created scenarios in my head where I think people don't want to be with me? Have I created, because
mm.
we create all kinds of narratives in our head, right? And we got to watch ourselves talk. And quiet, when we take the time to quietly reflect on those narratives, it could be a wake up call.
Yeah, for sure. And we don't want to do it. We're used to the busyness and the noise. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's good. Good stuff, Becky. Well, one more thing I wanted to be sure we talked about that you pointed out, in order to have valuable friendships, we really can't be easily offended,
Yeah.
and we can't take things like too personally. And there's C.S. Lewis is my favorite author, and you quoted from him in the book. You actually have a chapter called Don't Be Easily Offended. So
Yep.
I'm going to quickly read this C.S. Lewis quote, and then I want you to talk to us about it. Okay. He said, "To love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything, and your heart will certainly be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure to keep it intact, you must give your heart to no one, not even an animal. Wrap it carefully around with hobbies and little luxuries and avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It'll be unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable.
I
That's good
love that
stuff.
quote.
Mm,
I think first of all, personally, I have a fairly sensitive spirit, and I remember an older friend taking me out on a walk when I was maybe 16 or 17. And she said to me, you have a really sensitive spirit, and that's a beautiful thing, but you've got to watch that you're not easily offended. And as I look around our culture today, I think that this is a growing thing in our culture, right? And so people get offended, and we live in what's been called the cancel society, or the
mm-hmm.
cancel culture. So
Yep.
if you offend me with your political views, I'm out. Or if
Yep.
you say the wrong thing to me, I'm got hurt feelings, and I'm going to back up and build a wall around my heart. But that is not helping us. Every relationship that you enjoy is going to hurt at one point or another, and I think sometimes we get a little ridiculous with this, right? We imagine, maybe we contact a friend and that friend can't do lunch, and then we find out later they had lunch with another friend and they didn't mention that to us, and all of a
Mm,
sudden we get, offended.
yes.
Or maybe somebody looks at us and they've got a lot on their mind, and so their brow is furrowed and we think, oh,
Right.
they're mad at me. Chances are they aren't even thinking about you, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
we have to really guard this, because I think when you allow yourself to become offended, when you build what I like to call a monument to your own pain, or build a
Mm,
wall around yourself, like C.S. Lewis said, it really
mm-hmm.
becomes a tomb where you don't enjoy the life giving relationships that you were meant to have. And so we've got
Yeah.
to allow grace to flow out of our lives,
Yeah.
learn to laugh a little, when somebody says something silly, that offends you, just have a good belly laugh over it later, because chances are you've said inappropriate things, or you've
Heck
said
yeah.
things that have offended people, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes we just need to, you know, rebirth that sense of humor and let
Mm,
things go a lot faster. We'll have
mm.
much happier lives then.
I like that. Even the word rebirth, we have to be more childlike in that. Let it roll off our
Yes.
backs and keep playing with the friend, right? Even if they threw your mud
Yeah.
pie to the ground.
Yes. Yes. Or
Oh.
tackled you to the ground.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, this has been so good. You've given me so much to think about. I know the listeners are going to walk away encouraged from this, Becky. And your book, it absolutely, I can say the same thing about that. Cultivating deeper connections, really good. Lots of good stuff in there. Before we say goodbye, any last encouragement for us about cultivating those deep connections?
Yeah, I just want to say, hey, if you're feeling lonely today and you're listening to this, if you're introverted or extroverted, take a few minutes and analyze, what narratives have I believed that need to be changed, and where do I need to take initiative?
Mhm.
Maybe it's just you set it as a goal this week that you're going to reach out to one friend and say, hey, come on over for a cup of coffee. I
Yeah.
want to hear more of your story.
I love it. Oh, thank you. I'm going to do it too, Becky. I'm going to do it.
Good, good.
This has been great. Thank you for being with us and encouraging us.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
And make sure you tell everybody where they can find you, Becky.
Yes, you can find me at beckyharling.com. I have a lot of free resources up there. In fact, I think we have a free resource up right now that's a discussion guide that goes with
Oh,
this book,
great.
Cultivating Deeper Connections in a
Oh,
Lonely
great. I will
World.
link that. I'll link it in
Yeah,
the show
and
notes.
so what what's cool about that is you could gather two or three friends and go through the book together and say, hey,
Yeah.
how are we doing on this empathy thing? Or how
Oh,
are we
I
doing
love
on
it.
this? So,
Love
yeah,
it.
that will help you. So, yeah, reach out to me on my website. You can definitely follow me on social media now that we talked all about how bad social media
For sure.
we do the best we can, but
Yeah, yeah. And there's good sides to it. We all know that.
sure, sure. And
Uh,
I just, in case you're wondering, I don't even know how to use the filters. So there usually are
I
no filters
don't
on mine. So what you're getting is the real me, for
either.
better or
Amen.
worse.
Amen. Well, thank you so much, Becky. This has been fun.
Thanks.
Well, I really hope that encouraged you. I hope that you have a couple action steps that you're going to do yourself. And I hope you too feel like you just made a new friend with Becky. What a great talk that was. Thanks for listening, friends. Go to soulyrested.com/podcast to get the episodes in your inbox every week without even having to think about it. And all of the links, etc., that we mention. I'm going to include the link to Becky's study guide that she mentioned in the email for this episode and in the show notes. And is there anything else? I think that's it. So soulyrested.com/podcast to get those emails. Thanks for listening. And remember, it is easy to forget how blessed we are to live this life. So enjoy the simple, everyday efforts. It's not easy, but it's a very good life.